Hawksley Workman and Todd Lumley performing from Hawksley's 2001 record, Almost a Full Moon. 15 years.
Yeah.
That's a while ago.
It is a while ago.
Now you're outperforming the entire album at these shows. How's it feeling to revisit the entire record every night?
It's good. I mean, this record was a funny mistake that, I didn't set out to write a Christmas record. It wasn't in the plans. It happened by accident. 15 years ago, I was living in Paris. We were briefly famous there, and it was kind of an exciting time. And I was fasting to stay skinny for photo shoots.
You were fasting?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I said it was for spiritual reasons back then, but the truth of it really is that I wanted to be lean and mean, like a archetypal rock and roll star.
This is coming out today. This is the...
Yeah. This is the reason. So it's tough. Paris is a tough place to not eat. And so we hired a piano, had it put in the apartment. And I was waiting for the band. I think I had a week, probably between press things, and they were landing to do a big European tour. And so I sat and I wrote this record in about 5 days and recorded in another 2 or 3 days. And it was kind of done. And then it was a miracle because I told the label, look, this just happened. Can we put it out? And even that was pretty fun because they were able to turn it around in the same year within a couple of weeks, sort of. And then it's now a funny record that I get to sing. And there's songs in there that are just so, I don't know, they're just so vividly painted. The record was really written in some ways, too, to celebrate my grandma because she was still alive then. My Gladys Hawksley was a real kook and a fibber and a storyteller and was just a very, very important person to my brother and I growing up. And she made Christmas, she ritualized it, she made it very special. So all of that energy is kind of contained in that record. Again, it's not necessarily your hottest career move to follow up a big rock and roll hit like Striptease with a Christmas record that was sort of out of left field as well. But to revisit the music every night is kind of a way to intermingle with the spirits of my grandma and some of that wonderful childlike nostalgia that, can't help but seep in this time of year.
But when you say it's a Christmas record, I should say it's not your typical Christmas record in that it's not, one original song and then Jingle Bells and Deck the Halls and God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. I mean, these were all songs, I guess, inspired by Christmas more than a Christmas record.
Yeah, I think at the time, I was feeling nostalgic for Christmas, and sometimes it's an embarrassing holiday to say that you love out loud because...
Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of ugliness and commerciality and just triteness around Christmas that sometimes if you out yourself as a Christmas person, you get an eye roll. And I think that in that sort of maybe subtle embarrassment, I decided to go exploring, well, what is it about Christmas that's so special to me? And again, it comes down to those ritualized things that my grandma had introduced to us as kids. And it was the singing, it was the food, it was the Christmas pageant, it was the lead up to things was very special. She made it very special. We'd go to her house around Christmas and she'd greet my brother and I at the door with cocktails, she said, which was a glass of 7-Up and a maraschino cherry on a sword. And it was like Christmas was made to feel special. And I think exploring that stuff on this record made it all feel legit. Like I wasn't some kook who just liked a trite old holiday. I was somebody who had legitimate, warm, family-connected feelings around that holiday that were worth celebrating and worth writing about.
And you talked before about, on this show, about perhaps being a bit more spiritual, a bit more religious in terms of a Christian faith back in those days. I mean, what were Christmases like around that time?
Well, it was, my parents were young and I think we joined the church and the Cub Scouts in the same week. I think they just thought we got these kids, we're supposed to do something with them. And it was just so lucky that we went to the United Church, which was a place in my little town of singing. It just felt like every Sunday we got to go and sing these amazing songs and hear these amazing stories. And there was, no guilt attached. My parents weren't pious. Like we didn't go home and take church with us. But definitely in my late teens, I took it very seriously. I sort of had that really devout phase that lasted from my late teens and my early 20s.
And this is while you were performing as Hawksley Workman. This is
definitely in the first couple of records. I mean, those biblical allusions are there's quite a few of them in the first couple of records. And yeah, definitely there was a time, even if I ever considered another job, it was that I thought I could be a United Church minister. I thought, well, that could kind of be up my alley. The minister we had as kids was just I had a few that were all wonderful, and they always provided opportunities for my brother and I to sing and play and speak in church. And When you're young in a small town church that is mostly full of people who are much older than you, we were just given carte blanche to, I remember being asked one Good Friday if we would do something that was dark for the service. And so my brother and I put together Enter Sandman for...
But Metallica.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the kind of world I grew up in the church. That's, I think, why I was so fond of it. It just felt like a place where if you had a willing heart, there was always a willing ear.
You mentioned that this, in many ways, was a nostalgic record of a time gone by, and it's even nostalgic for now. I mean, it was 15 years ago. When you sing these songs, do you feel like the person who wrote them is the same person you are now?
No. I wish that weren't the case. When you're a young artist and you make your first record, your first few records, they're often lauded for their courage, But I think really it's mostly just naivete that gets misinterpreted as courage. And that naivete that is in your early years when you're touring and you really believe your own hype. And I think if there's a nostalgia now for me, I look back at that kid in that Parisian apartment starving himself to make sure that he looked good on the magazine cover. There was something just wonderful. I was just following the scent, just blindly, and I think that was what was so wonderful about kind of being famous briefly was you got to see just what an enormous sacrifice and how strange that whole thing really is. And so I'm nostalgic for that kid because I wish I maybe would have had my eyes open a little more instead of my head down pulling the plow. I think back in those days, as all of us, me and the rest of the fellows in the band, it all just seemed like a whirlwind. But
it's hard. It's hard to have that kind of perspective. It's hard to know. There's a line in a television show. I wish someone could tell me I was in the good old days while they were happening.
Exactly. And I'm probably in the good old days right now. If the 15 years from now, me will look back and go, "What a clown! He should have had this part figured out too." But you can't help but be nostalgic around Christmas. And I think now, my brother has 2 boys who are the same age apart as we were, and it's great to see them, and I get to feel like an uncle. And again, we get to relive the making of those new rituals. I sort of feel like that's kind of one of the things about Christmas that in our sort of secular world that we are attracted to. It's the one time a year where we take a hectic life and we slow it down and we recognize that these ritualized elements, our connections to our families and friends and food and singing, we get to stop and understand the importance of that.
Just briefly, because I want to hear some more music. I think we all want to hear some more music. You write this holiday record in 2001, and now not only are you touring it, but there's also a book,
right.
Almost a Full Moon. Beautiful illustrations done by Jensine Ekwall, is that right? We'll put some images on our website, cbc.ca/Q. What was your reaction when you saw these illustrations to your songs?
Well, I can say I had nothing to do with them. Once we selected Jensine, her initial illustrations just had so much dark humor and warmth. It seemed like a person with a generous soul, and she would email me drafts of the illustrations. And I think there's a new hormonal reality I think I'm going through in my early 40s where I just weep more, and I would open these things up, and the hairs on my arms would stand on end, and I would just weep. She just was able to capture an elegance and a beauty. She did a lot of the heavy lifting, and I'm so grateful for the passion she put into this book.